back, everyone. It's Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry, and we've got another exciting show lined up for you today. Well, it's really exciting. Anyways, I'm Scott Terry. I'm a mental health professional, psychologist, family therapist, counselor, blah, blah, blah. I run the Art and Counseling Center. But what's pertinent to today is we're going to think about bigger things, how we think about things.
And more pertinent than that is, this is KRUU FM radio, 100.1, solar-powered radio in Fairfield, Iowa. Go ahead.
No. So, Rob, take it away. So, my co-host, Rob Hubler, is going to say...
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon when you are listening to this.
And our special co-host, our special guest today...
Jonas Magrum.
Jonas, tell us about yourself and what we're going to talk about today, apart from this bigger thinking, how we think about issues.
There's not much to say about me. I'm a family man. I have a small business. I grew up in Oakland, California. I went to Cal State University, Chico, and got my degree in social sciences.
When were you at Chico, just out of curiosity? My brother was the head of the student union there.
Really? 66?
That would have been about a few years before him, but yeah.
I'm not sure what else there is to say.
Well, you run a radio show yourself.
I have a fairly new radio show on Blog Talk Radio called Climate Action USA. And listeners can, of course, join me there, in addition to being on KRUU often to listen to your shows.
And today, the topic, once we talk about this bigger thinking thing, the topic we're going to get to that you're really passionate about is what?
Well, right now, I am a local lead organizer to fight the Bakken pipeline that has been proposed to be built from the northwest corner of Iowa all the way through the state, including our county here, Jefferson County, to Illinois. It would cross every major waterway or go under the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Des Moines River, innumerable waterways, and we're against this pipeline for many reasons, and I imagine that's one of the things we would talk about today. And more generally, I believe that climate change represents perhaps the greatest threat in human history, along with possibly genetically modified organisms. And fighting climate change is my deepest passion.
And some people, I'm sure, will disagree with you. And they will absolutely say that you're wrong and they're right, or they're right and they're wrong. And it's the bigger question then starts becoming, how do we know? How do we decide what's right or wrong? How do we decide how to think about issues? Because it really becomes kind of an issue in and of itself, because I have to either be for you or against you. And there's no sort of middle ground. There's no way to think about these things. So as a therapist and as a cognitive scientist, I suppose you'd say, one of my big issues that I keep talking about is evaluating how we're thinking. We're evaluating our thinking, how we think, who we are, why we think what we think, what do we think about, and how to think about a certain topic, and then decide what to do with it. And we need to move out of this good or bad, right or wrong polarization that we keep talking about on this show quite a bit. And the example I keep giving, for instance, is Western medicine is good or it's bad. And it's neither. Taking medicine for a psychotropic medicine for a certain issue might be good, might be bad. There might be alternatives. There might be other things that might be useful. Things are not good or bad. The question is always about how do we really think about the issue so we could decide what works for us today, which might not have worked for us a year ago or 6 months from now. And it's kind of like thinking about, this bigger picture we get caught up in our lives and what do we do and what do we do about this and what do we do about that. And sometimes we need to go to what we think of as an existential frame, like, who are we? Why do we think what we're thinking? And so we can move out of this something's good or something's bad. Everybody's got incentives and agendas and stuff, but it really stems from this bigger point of, what do I want to create out of my life? So I love the idea, for instance, of taking a topic like we're talking about today and go, how do we think about that topic? How do we address what's behind that topic to know what's useful or not? And so we got to move to sometimes not being lazy thinkers.
Being lazy thinkers, that is one way to describe the what do you call it, the inhibition to be able to embrace the bigger picture that you're describing. But I think that there's a deeper and perhaps a more understandable psychology behind belief. And that is that we are so locked in to our worldview. As a matter of fact, our sense of stability in the world, in an ever-changing world, is created by this grid of beliefs. I think Alan Watts described that way back when. This grid of beliefs that we superimpose on an ever-changing world to gain a sense of egoic stability, that the world is safe. And the funny thing is that we will cling to that grid that maybe is deeply ingrained over many, many years of living and reinforced by our local group over and over throughout the years. We will cling to that grid even if it threatens our very existence. Giving up that immediate sense of security of our beliefs is more threatening to us than even the potential to lose life itself.
Both of you are making really clear and important points. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is you both use the words me and us almost interchangeably. And I think thinking and how we think and where we're going first depends upon whether or not we're thinking just about me, whether I'm just thinking about me, or I'm thinking about me in conjunction with the other two of you sitting here, or with Fairfield, or with Iowa, or with the United States, that am I thinking only on my own, for my own sake, or am I thinking for the sake of the world or climate or whatever? I mean, how do we determine the outcome of our thinking without realizing that we are thinking only about ourselves? Yesterday I was at everybody's passing out notification.
It's a store in town.
Pardon me?
It's a store
everybody's a grocery store here in town, passing out leaflets announcing a meeting on the No Bakken pipeline people. And about 1 out of 4 or so immediately countered me by saying, this is a good thing, or it's a job for me, or who do you want to buy your oil from, the Middle East or from Canada and North Dakota? And almost everybody was thinking from their individual point of view.
Yeah.
So that, and I want to, how do we go from individual point of view to the climate change? But before we go, we need to say that you are listening to Mental Health Matters, and this is KRUU 100.1 Solar Powered Radio in Fairfield.
And feel free to email us to become part of the conversation at mentalhealthmatters@krufm.com.
I have a response to Rob's question.
I'm go ahead.
Was it Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah.
My sense is, this is a political perspective, but my sense is there's been such a massive erosion of quality jobs in the United States as as big corporations have shipped jobs to cheaper working environments in third world countries, India, Pakistan, etc. And people are pushed. The quality of life is under such assault, such threat, that if you don't provide for your family, as many people are having difficulty doing, and which is in itself a trauma.
So it's a survival need is what you're both indicating. And I would say that's also true when we start thinking, make it very concrete. When we start talking about couples counseling, which I do, obviously, and one of the things that I always have to address is we get lost in ourselves. We start thinking of the other, our partner, as being destructive or hurting us or betraying us, and thus we victimize ourselves by our own perspectives. It's not that our partner or the world might not be doing something to us, but my statement over and over again as a future-focused therapist is, what am I creating from this? As I've said a million times, trauma isn't what happened, it's what we did to ourselves afterwards, and then keep doing to ourselves afterwards. What are we creating from that? So when we start thinking, yes, there's certainly forces out there that are destructive, and as a mental health issue, it is essential to come back to this sense of self-empowerment and control. But on the other hand, when you're saying, yes, survival needs, I might not have a job. So therefore, yes, it makes sense. What do I care if a pipeline comes through my town? I'll at least have a job. I'll be able to survive. I'll be able to take care of myself and by extension take care of my family and by extension to my friends. And my friends work on the pipeline too. So why is that such a bad thing? I can't think 30 years, 100 years out, destruction of the planet. I can't think, is this really a good thing? I can't think, maybe a couple more billionaires making a few more billion. What do I care that I'm just surviving? I have to get through today. So the question is, how do I come back to that? And that might not be an appropriate way to think about it either.
Well, people certainly are driven by their security and their economic well-being. And just as Rob encountered it, everybody's yesterday. When I went to two of the public meetings that Dakota Access was required to hold, the informational meetings in December.
Dakota Access are the people that are putting the pipeline in.
The Bakken pipeline. Right. Let's not say they're putting it in. They've applied for an application to build it. And the only people that have really spoken out in favor of the pipeline are the unions that hope to get some temporary good jobs, and some landowners who want to make a quick buck by selling access to their properties.
And you can't fault either of those people, can you? You can't fault people wanting to get a job. You can't fault somebody trying to make money on their land and do something more.
Well, if I could just be spontaneous,
yeah,
I would say I can fault them.
How so?
Well, for instance...
Because you think they're short-sighted?
Well, certainly that. I can't fault them for wanting to support their families. I can't fault them for that. I can't fault them for wanting a piece of the American dream and to be able... the good feeling that comes from having a job and paying our bills and contributing to the world. I can't fault them for that. However, in the same way, and I wouldn't compare union people in Iowa to people who are involved in human trafficking. Money often, or sometimes at least, brings with it destructive consequences. And the willingness or the blindness, that's really what it is. It's not a blindness. These people don't say to themselves, I'm willing to give up the quality of life on our planet so I can have a job. They don't think like that. But because of this thing we call cognitive dissonance or resonance, their ideology or their worldview, I need a job, that overwhelms their thinking. And I think Maslow would have said that. When we're at that point of struggling for survival, that's all we think about. And whatever supports our survival, we will tend to gravitate towards that. And whatever the negative consequences that may be associated with that are dismissed. We cannot afford, literally or figuratively, to worry about the world when we're struggling to feed our own families.
But, I find this a remarkable thought. And then I want to get into some of the details, by the way, about why it is useful or not useful, this pipeline. And I profess a lot of ignorance on this. But what I have in several clients that are very, very multi-millionaires. And you would think they would start feeling more secure, more safe, more sense of control, because now they have more money. They have the one commodity that makes them feel safer. But it doesn't. It actually does the exact opposite. The rebound reaction is terrible.
The fear of loss? Is that what that means?
The fear of loss, that I might make a bad mistake, and then therefore, and then their mind frame becomes very paranoid, or I will lose. It's not about money being good or bad. The research is very clear. Once you're past the point of survival where you're making a decent living and able to do something, that you're not worried about your next meal, the next 100,000, the next million doesn't make you any happier. What makes you happier is that sense of self, that I could take control over that tool. Money is a tool. How am I applying that tool to make a difference? How am I applying my world to make a difference in my world? And one of the things I think is interesting is, if you think this is a good idea, for example, that one of the things that I always recommend to everyone is that they volunteer. That this becomes, it just doesn't become a cause célèbre, and this is the cause this week, and last week it was being against this thing, and this week's against some grain thing, and next week's against something else, or some misnomer about vaccines that we think is good or bad without understanding the fuller picture. It's the same kind of thing. If you think that this is a good thing in terms of being able to make a difference in the world, or, again, let me rephrase that, if this is something that works for you and works for your world, your larger world view that we're talking about, so you can be more of who you need to be, then you should volunteer. You should do something. Get involved. Don't sit around and listen to this. Get up today. Turn off this radio right now. Well, in a few minutes. And do something with your life today.
Engage life.
Engage. Absolutely.
So, Scott, I think you're referring to this activism that I and others are engaged in.
Yes.
And there is a sense, I talk to people every day about the Bakken pipeline proposal, and I speak to them about climate change every day, which I'm very passionate about. And those people, many people, feel depressed even at the mention of the degradation of the planet. They don't dispute the overwhelming science, for instance, that has substantiated that human beings are causing climate change. They don't dispute the potential dangers that we're already beginning to see in the world. But the idea of focusing any attention on it is utterly depressing to them. And
because they feel hopeless, or powerless.
Both of those things, exactly.
And it's the same thing if you have that money or you don't have the money, you still end up with that sense of powerlessness and self-victimization. And the way to get out of that, I'm saying, is get involved. Engage in life, as Rob so aptly said. Engage, do something to make a difference. And it's the act of engagement that matters more than the goal. The process in itself is the goal, the process of engagement and making a difference.
I agree 100%. And here's a couple things that I believe are essential. Do we need to do a quick check-in, Rob?
We can.
Sorry.
You're listening to Matter Health Matters. Mental Health Matters. And this is KRUU Radio, 100.1 FM on your dial, solar-powered radio in Fairfield, Iowa.
And Scott, Terry, and Jonas Magrum and Rob Hubler.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. We
And
are indeed.
We broadcast Tuesdays at 6:30, 12:30 on Thursdays, and on the internet always. We are all archived, up to speed, and ready to rock and roll.
And by the way, last week we missed our 6:30 show, but it has been archived, and it is on. You can go to KRUU. And
It was a great show.
Yeah, it was a
Really.
very good show on the website. And look up, the name of the show was...
You'll see.
It's by date. So just look up the date of last week's show, and you can listen to it. I'm sorry. Go back to what we were talking about.
Thank you. So the point I was going to make is that it is there are two things. Number one is people feel, one of the things I hear is that the forces of big business have virtually taken over our entire political system and our legal system, and that it's hopeless to try to resist. Obviously, that doesn't motivate people to do anything, and it leaves them in this powerless victim state. The other thing is the idea that people, and I fall into this, become attached to the result. And as you said, Scott, and it's all about the goal, as opposed to, if I could paraphrase Marshall McLuhan, it's the medium of engagement that really brings meaning and satisfaction to life, not necessarily the outcome. And as a matter of fact, I heard one great philosopher, spiritual leader teach that we have control over action alone, never over the outcome, never over the fruit of action.
Yeah.
So what I find is when I'm able to just engage in giving my best, whatever that looks like, my little effort on behalf of, really it's on behalf of myself, my own family. It's always, you talked about earlier, Rob, I think, about people making it about, and you may have, Scott, about making it about me.
Right.
My sense is that it's always about me. Only some people are able to incorporate a bigger sphere of me in their thinking than others. And I don't know why. I think part of
I
it...
love that. A bigger sphere of me.
Sphere of me, right.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
You both have mentioned powerlessness and the depression that results from that, and also, again, going back to my experience at Everybody's yesterday, people do feel like why expend the effort? We aren't getting it place. But if we really take a look around, look at Indiana. The results of what's going on in Indiana may not turn out to be.
Explain what that is.
Pardon me?
Explain what that is.
Well, you explain it. I mean, you were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a new law that was just passed and signed.
a Religious Freedom
Yeah,
Act,
yeah.
which it means that it's for Christian right religion. So it's not religious freedom, it's religious freedom for some people to have as a perspective that included in not just that law, but in the other state statutes, if you combine it all, means that there's able to have discrimination against LGBTQ. And maybe, and then we start talking about, again, does that work or does that not work? Well, the backlash shows that it doesn't work for Indiana. It doesn't work for people. It doesn't work for religious rights. I mean, Rob, you're a pastor, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Or should I be careful about saying "for God's sake" when I'm talking about pastor?
Yeah. Well, anyway, you're right. But my point is that we are not powerless. We do have alternatives. Well, there are things that we can do, and the Indiana exposure of what's going on right now shows that when people act, when people engage, then there are results that that we can overcome this force out there that supposedly is we're unable to handle.
One of my favorite examples of that, Rob, is Mahatma Gandhi managing to by engaging in civil disobedience and standing up, managed to lead a people that had been oppressed for hundreds of years and throw the most powerful nation on earth out of their country at that time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the idea, we don't know. There's no guarantees in life. We could be hit by a car this afternoon, and that would be the end of it. The only thing we have control over is action, what we do, how we engage in living. And I find that it's much more empowering and much more satisfying to engage in a effort, in action that I guess we could just say that is natural for me and which brings satisfaction to life. It's not that when you see people that are volunteering and that do great things for humanity, it's not, I don't really think that they're making some great sacrifice. I think that they're acting naturally and have discovered what I heard a wise man once refer to as the gifts of giving. Mm-hmm. It's always about me. It's not that anybody's, it's always about us, we could say. It's not about that we make some great sacrifice for others. It's that we find that by serving a purpose greater than our own immediate needs or immediate gratification, that life becomes more fulfilling. And
absolutely. So, okay, I want to hear a bit more about the Bakken thing in our last 2 minutes. Right. Tell me a little bit. We might have to do another show here on this. But tell us a little bit more about it and about your radio show again, where people could find out more information.
We have a local group called No Bakken Here, which is resisting this proposed
and why
construction.
Should people resist this?
Because it represents a perpetual danger to Iowa's water and soil. There have been hundreds and hundreds of pipeline leaks in just the last 5 years in the United States. There have been catastrophic spills of over 1 million gallons of oil that leaked into the Kalamazoo River, for instance, in Michigan in 2010, that are not cleaned up and that have polluted water and killed unimaginable amounts of wildlife. So it also enables the extraction of another 500,000 barrels of crude oil a day that are going to accelerate climate change, that are going to end up in the atmosphere, trap more heat, and force us closer to climate chaos.
So your proposal would be we go towards more natural alternatives,
absolutely.
Solar, wind.
And we have those abilities now.
And why would people want to do that? Why is that a useful thing? Why does that work?
If you care about the well-being of your children and of future generations, and you want them to enjoy a quality of life, and rather than 30-year droughts as are predicted for Iowa. And
so some people don't believe in climate change at all. You know, you were telling me that some of the same people who were saying that cigarettes were not bad are the exact same people that are behind this.
So that's an excellent question. How do we navigate belief in order to arrive at a decision which leads either to a course of action or a course of acceptance? And that's a bigger subject that maybe we can do another show on, because it's very important to me, and I'll just give a quick teaser. It's science.
And really, again, as I said, not being a lazy thinker. Allow yourself to really truly look at what's going on, and don't make things right or wrong, black or white, good or bad, but what are we going to create from all this?
I would say it requires being a courageous thinker.
I love it. Let's end on that.
And if there's a courageous thinker out there that wants more information about No Bakken, they should contact.
They can go to our Facebook page,
right.
No Bakken Here.
Fantastic. Thank you both, and you're listening to Mental Health Matters at KRUU FM. Bye.